Hey everybody, in this video I want to go over the following topics. So we have our module 3 items, and then there's the textbook, and then there's the work ahead for us, and then I want to get into your assignments here in module 3. So let's get started. Let's start with the textbook. So this textbook does a pretty good job of laying out the different steps related to the marketing research process. And for that reason, I have divided our semester-long marketing research project based on the chapters. So that's why you see chapter 3 assignment, chapter 4 assignment, and so on. Now, it's not always going to be a perfect match, as you'll soon see when I start talking about chapter 3 assignment, but it's pretty close. And I mentioned this concept in your chapter 3 assignment instructions in the second paragraph, where I say our goal is to complete a research paper and present findings to a client. The various steps in the research process will be divided into distinct steps, roughly following the chapters in our textbook. Hence, again, why we have chapters 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on assignments. So that's kind of the thinking behind that. And as we get into this chapter 3 assignment and then chapter 4 and chapter 5, well, there's information that I want to briefly go over. So I created a Google Docs document that I will use as my talking points in this video. So let's get to that, and then I'll go back to the chapter assignments information. All right, so let's start with chapter 1 information regarding marketing research. Regardless of the types of products or services offered, all organizations share a common problem. They need information in order to accomplish their goals effectively. And when you think about our world today, where we have digital devices like something like this, right? Or if you're on a laptop computer or a desktop computer, everything that we do, or almost everything we do, really, can be tracked electronically. We leave a trail, and that leaves a lot of data available for marketers to sift through, analyze, and use to make decisions about what to do with the organization's product or service and anything related to their marketing efforts and future efforts in product development, research, all of that fun stuff. And all that comes down to marketing research. So, two things about marketing research: it's about gathering data. So, as I mentioned, just the very fact of using these devices, we're already leaving data. And whenever you buy something, well, that's data for the organization to track because they know their sales numbers, what they sold, when it sold, how quickly it sold. So yeah, lots of different data. And then transforming that data into useful information, because a bunch of numbers is not going to mean anything, right? Like, you could, for example, if you have a social media account, you could take a look at the analytics behind that, what people are clicking, how many visitors you have a day, how many people are buying this, how many people are doing this or that. Well, in the end, those are just numbers. It's really about using statistical analysis to figure out, okay, what kind of decisions can I make with this? So that's kind of a brief, really simplistic overview of what it is that marketing researchers do. And consequently, that's also related to the idea of why Athens State tied the two together in its latest offering of a bachelor's degree, which started in the spring 2024 semester. So that's the Bachelor of Science in Marketing and Analytics. So that's just kind of the backstory behind that. And speaking of that, I will be speaking about that in a moment. And I realized that before starting this video, I didn't gather my documents. So I'm just going to pause the video real quick. Okay, hey, I'm back. You probably didn't even notice I was gone for a couple minutes while I looked for that document. So anyway, going back to this whole idea of lots of data and then using statistical analysis to make sense of all that information, well, there's this sentence right here from our first chapter. Data analytics would allow a marketer to make informed decisions in developing, implementing, and monitoring the firm's marketing plans. Because again, right, when it's just a bunch of numbers, it's not necessarily going to make much sense. We have to run it through statistical analysis to make sense of that. Now, let's get into this Bachelor of Science degree. Part of my work since starting at Athens State in August 2021 was to look into, okay, can we start some kind of degree in marketing? And to do that, it was about gathering research as you might expect. Typical research stuff like looking at what do other universities have and what does that entail and what is it that they're offering, the kind of classes and so forth. And then the other part to that is looking at information like this one where it's secondary data. So I'm going to talk more about that later on in this video, but I wanted to show the job outlook for a marketing degree. And here are examples of occupations related to marketing, how much they make, how many openings a year, the expected growth, and so on. And then also, not, I don't, I won't be showing that, but I also collected primary data. So again, I'll talk more about that later in this video, where I sent out a questionnaire to students at Athens State, and perhaps it hasn't been that long ago, some of you were involved with that. You might remember when I was in other classes with you that I sent out a survey saying, hey, we're trying to come up with this new degree program. Can you please answer these 10 questions or so related to that? So I was gathering data to see student interest and where that might take us, how we could justify that, hey, there is interest in this program, even within the Athens State University student population. So that's an example of using data to inform future action. So in this case, we decided, yeah, it's worthwhile to pursue this and to get approval from the Alabama Commission on Higher Education to have our own marketing and analytics degree at Athens State University. So just imagine other uses for marketing research to help an organization determine what direction to go. So that's where we'll be doing a piece of that, something like that, for our clients this semester as part of our marketing research project. Marketers, what marketers? Some do research. Oh, there should be like a hyphen or something. Marketers, some do research to. Okay, that just doesn't make sense. Sorry. Marketers do research. There we go. Marketers do research to better understand consumers and their interests and behaviors. And the textbook mentioned something about being information detectives because we're sifting through all that data and trying to figure out, okay, what can we glean from all of these numbers, all of these patterns. So here's an example, grocery store example. When you go to a grocery store and you bring your phone with you and you have your Wi-Fi on, so even if you do not connect to the grocery store's Wi-Fi, well, you're still broadcasting a unique address. So this would be getting technical here, but your MAC address, your media access control address, which is a unique identifier. Each device that can connect to the internet has its own MAC address. And with that, you're broadcasting it and it could track where you are in the store, how long you were there, and so forth. So, and so on. So, yeah, in real time, they know where you went And if you think about it, it makes sense that something like that would be useful to a grocery store, because then they can determine, okay, what is it that they're looking at? How long are they taking to get there? So is it effective that the most popular items would be the ones that we put in the very back so that people will make their way through the entire store just to get that item? So think about milk and eggs. Those are pretty common staples that people always need regularly, right? But they're never at the front of the store. They're always in the back because grocery stores have figured out that if you go through the rest of the store before getting there, you might find items that you'll like. So, yeah, in many ways, that's an example. That's a very, I was going to say good example in the sense that that really gives you an idea of the kind of tracking that marketers can use. And so that also brings up other things, right? Like ethical considerations, privacy considerations. But um, let's focus on, what is it that we can get from that, and that's very useful data that theoretically could be useful for the organization, for the marketer to figure out how best to continue offering their products and services to the consumer. So it could be that it's not to be a bad actor, but instead to be useful, for this to be a mutually beneficial type of relationship where the organization can be profitable because they continue to provide excellent services and products, but then it also serves the customers well because they're getting what they want, right? So there is that aspect. Whew. Okay, so with all that said, chapter 1 continues with this exhibit right here where it breaks down the research process. So that leads me to chapter 2, which is about the research question, formulating the problem. So that's this portion right here. Well, chapter 3 is about the different kinds of research designs. So in this case, yeah, out in the wild, you would determine the type of research based on the problem at hand. For this class, I am assigning us a descriptive research design. So we're going to use questionnaires to determine something. So we're not going to do exploratory and causal research designs. Okay, so that brings me to what I said a few minutes ago, where I said, well, the chapter assignments don't perfectly correspond with our actual chapter assignments, because chapter 2 was about formulating the problem. Well, I don't have you doing that until chapter 3 assignment. And that's because just the way it worked out with my scheduling of our different activities, I don't have you all making your final decisions on your clients to work with until the several weeks into the semester. And if I'm reusing this video when this course is offered in the summer, it won't be until a couple of weeks into the semester. So anyway, chapter 3 has 2 parts to it. The first part would be when I finally know the clients that each team will be working on. So that's where this will go, along with other documents related to that, like sponsorship agreements and group collaboration plans. And then part 2 would be the actual formulation of the problem. So look to chapter 2 for that information. And I've laid it out to where they're numbered, the different things to include in this part 2 of your chapter 3 assignment. And to help you formulate your own document where you show your research problem, you show your process through that, I have provided in the modules navigation a new module called Resource Center, and then there's a chapter 3 assignment example. And I want to show you real quick kind of how it works based on what kind of item I put under here. So I put a link under Resource Center This link takes you to the chapter 3 assignment example. Well, when you click on it, so I'll open it in a new tab. When you click on it, you might get a page that looks like this. Or maybe you're using a browser that allows you to see a preview, but typically that's not going to be the case. What you can do then is click on this link right here, and that'll take you to the shared document that I intended to have you look at. So here you'll see that this corresponds with the different items in the chapter 3 assignment instructions. So the first part is to show a general statement of the client's problem. So I will say, for you to get the information for this part of the assignment, that would involve reaching out to your client and asking these questions, because I'm not asking you to come up with this just based on guesses. It will have to come from your client. So get a general statement of the client's problem. What is it that they're trying to accomplish? So in this case, I provided an example of a summer 2023 project where our marketing research students worked with the Caris library to determine what they can do to promote the library's new website. So they spoke with their clients within the Caris library and decided, okay, this is a statement of the client's problem. And then the second part is to talk about the decision or decisions to be made by your client. So there's this section right here. And so I provided you the examples so you could see what those different sections look like based on a specific problem. So this is how you're going to lay out your document to help you organize your thoughts, but then also for me to easily see your thought process as well. And then there's going to be number 3, the target for the decision, number 4, number 5, and so on. So this example should help you see how to go about laying your assignment. Now, this part about research objectives, this is the part where most students don't quite understand or have difficulty with. So I want to explain this real quick. So you have your research objectives, and I put information about that. Your research objective. So there's a managerial objective, but then there's also a research objective, and it looks like I need to fix my alignment here. A managerial objective is what the client hopes will result from the research project. So here are some examples here, like to increase the number of college students who shop at our store by the end of the year. So that's an example of what a manager would like to see. And then the research objective related to that would be would provide the information that will help the client reach their managerial objectives. So in the example of increasing the number of college students, a research objective could be to determine which media college students are exposed to most frequently and which media most strongly influence their purchase behavior. So just kind of see the difference between that. Just kind of ponder that a little bit. And then the next part would be to have your research objectives connected to research questions. And research questions would be the kind of questions, well, that you're trying to answer based on what you're trying to figure out from your research. So sorry about the circular kind of talk here, but this is one of those things where it's going to make more sense when it's actually time for you to do one specifically for your project. You're going to start seeing just the differences among these different items. And I will say this is your first go at your formulation of the research problem. There's going to be a future assignment where we can refine this based on just my feedback and your client's feedback. So don't worry about getting it perfect the first time around. All right. So just refer to the instructions carefully, read it several times to make sure you understand it, and then also take a look at the examples. So going back to the part where students miss it most often, so this is the part also where the research questions that are created should be connected to an objective. So for example, I have you separate them at first. So here are the research objectives, and then here are the research questions. But then for the last part of this assignment, I'm asking you to connect your research question to an objective. So in this case, there are 3 objectives. And so each objective should align to one or more of your research questions. So otherwise, if you don't do this type of work, you might just be wasting your time, or you might miss a question you're trying to answer. So that's kind of how it works when it comes to research. You have your objectives, you have your questions, but they have to match. All right, so I think I said enough about chapter 3. Let me move forward with this one as it relates to what you have going on for chapter 4 and chapter 5. So to be able to answer the questions, our research questions, we need data, right? So I talked about big data, the need for data analytics, using statistical analysis to make sense of all of that. Well, data can come from 2 places, and I already mentioned this real quick earlier in the video also. Primary data, secondary data. So primary data would be the data that is collected specifically for the purpose of answering one or more of your research questions. So for you all, you will be collecting primary data because later on, you will send out a survey with questions that will help you answer the research questions. Now, secondary data would be data just that exists anyway, and it's not necessarily specific to your current marketing research project, but it could help answer those questions. So for example, this type of data, when I was doing research for the bachelor's degree, this wasn't necessarily for Athens State, but I was able to use that information. So secondary data can come from other research institutions or government agencies that do research, for example, census data. It could also be data that an organization already collects anyway. So, for example, the grocery store example that I talked about a few minutes ago, they could use that information later on for other purposes to help them with research questions. So yeah, researchers may gather mountains of secondary or primary data or both, but the data are useless unless they are analyzed and interpreted in light of the problem. So again, there's that whole analytics concept. And I touched on ethics, so there's that. And then here are the topics from each chapter. So I talked about chapters 2 and 3. So chapter 2 was about formulating the problem, coming up with your research questions. Chapter 3 was about the different types of research designs. So we'll be doing a descriptive research design this semester. Chapter 4 is about secondary data, and then chapter 5 is about primary data. So chapter 4 assignment will be questions related to the idea of, let's see, secondary data, and then related to your topic. And then chapter 5 will be about primary data, also related to your topic for your marketing research project. Now, let me go back real quick to this. So I'll let you look at module 3 course materials and then also this IRB information. So that concludes what I want to talk about in this video. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions.